With the 2018 municipal elections less than a year and a half away, some Ontario cities are exploring the idea of voting online to boost voter turnout and make voting more accessible. Nicole Goodman is director of the Centre for E-Democracy. She studied many of the Ontario communities that gave e-voting a shot in 2014, and she joins us now to tell us what she discovered and what advice she'd give cities looking ahead to next year. Nice to have you back here.
Nice to be here. Okay,
so you did the 2014 elections report on online voting. How many municipalities actually in Ontario use online voting?
So in 2014, 97 of the 444 municipalities in Ontario used online voting.
That's quite a bit, actually.
It is quite a bit, yeah, and that's projected to double in 2018.
And what were some of the things that you thought were important takeaways from that experience?
So some of the important takeaways are that people want online voting. The stakeholders in Ontario want it. So voters, internet voters, and paper voters want online voting, candidates and electoral administrators.
How come?
For voters, it enhances accessibility and convenience. We found that it does increase turnout by 3%. So it's modest, it's not going to be a panacea.
How do you know that the 3% uptick in turnout you can directly attribute to online voting?
Well, Steve, I spent 3 years assembling a database, and myself and a colleague, we looked at 171 elections across 5 time periods. We looked at pre-internet voting and then when internet voting was implemented, and we controlled for other factors such as competitiveness. So we show a stable effect of 3% over time.
And you're convinced as well it improves accessibility?
According to people, like reported perceptions, it does improve their accessibility, but the main draw for online voting is really about convenience. Voters want additional choice and convenience today.
They just don't want to have to get off the couch. You could vote and stay on the couch.
You could vote in your underwear on the couch. But really, no, I really do think it's about convenience and accessibility. And I think a perfect example of that is, well, there's a few examples. So one, if you look at advance voting, you see that traditionally, you've heard about the voter decline, turnout's been declining at all levels of government. If you look at advance voting in those same elections, they've noted an unprecedented increase in recent elections. So to me, this signals the fact that voters want increased choice and convenience in voting. If you also look at the reasons why people aren't voting, many of them report everyday life issues, such as being too busy, traveling, being away, those types of things. Whereas, 8-9 years ago, people were reporting apathy, lack of interest as reasons for non-voting.
Do you think those logistical issues are real? I mean, I only ask because technically you're supposed to get, 4 hours off or something in order to be able to go vote? Now, I appreciate if you commute an hour and a half, you're not going to go home anyway. But there's so much advance poll voting as well. So is the life got in the way and I couldn't vote excuse legit in your view?
I think for some people it is, and I think good evidence of that is paper voters. So we asked paper voters, municipal and actually Indigenous voters, we asked them, would you vote online? And these are people who chose to vote by paper, but they knew about online voting. And in the case of municipal voters, 30% of them said they would vote in the future no matter what. They just weren't ready to try that time.
Sorry, 30% of paper voters said they'd try it online in the future.
They would try online voting in the future. Okay. And 47% said they would like to see the policy change, they'd like to see it implemented for special circumstances, in case they were sick, in case they were away, in case they got busy with their kids, they had mobility issues, those types of things. For Indigenous voters, it was 28% said they would use it in all circumstances, and 35% under special circumstances. So the fact that paper voters, despite concerns about online voting, want to see it introduced as a complementary voting method, I think that speaks volumes.
Pick up on the concerns. What are they?
Yes. The main concern is security, of course.
For sure.
And then after that, people say the largest group is, I don't have any concerns. Some other concerns are fraud and privacy. But what's interesting that I wasn't expecting to learn from the study is that privacy is actually cited as a primary benefit of online voting. And some people actually choose to vote online because they deem it to be more private than casting a ballot at a traditional poll location by paper.
How can that be? You're behind a box, you huddle over your ballot, you put an X on it, you drop it in the... No one knows how you voted.
I guess some people feel that in the comfort of their home is more private for them.
Okay, but can I confess something really stupid here? Yeah. Okay, I remember going to vote once in one municipal election. I can't remember if it was the previous one or the one before that. And I did my little computer card here, and I think that and then you put it you slide it into the counter.
Tabulator, yeah.
Tabulator, right. you walk out of there, and frankly, you have no idea if it really connected, right?
Yeah.
I know that when I put an X on a piece of paper in a box, and somebody's going to see it, hold it, count it, it's there, I have a lot of confidence in that. Okay, tell me why I'm wrong to be concerned that the tabulator is just as secure as putting an X on a piece of paper and putting it in a box.
I don't think you're wrong. So, I mean, there are definitely concerns, and that's why we haven't seen online voting become more widespread. So if we had a panel right now with a computer scientist beside me, you'd hear very different perspectives because they study the computer science security aspect, and I study the social science attitudinal aspect. So yes, there are definite concerns, and that's partially why higher levels of government haven't decided to go ahead with it. But I mean, we're moving forward. We're developing technology. There are other countries that use it nationally for votes with great success.
Who does that?
Well, in Estonia and Switzerland, they're the two major cases. But the United States, actually, despite a lot of fear, they actually use it in 32 states for citizens living abroad, and Alaska uses it for federal and state votes.
Is this online or sliding a...
This is online voting.
Online voting they do in how many states?
32 for citizens and military abroad.
Huh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
How concerned are you about hacking?
I definitely think that hacking is a concern. So, I mean, I think that policymakers have a really big challenge moving forward because on the one hand, I think, we're seeing all of our institutions modernize, albeit government institutions a little bit more slowly, but electoral modernization is going to happen. Maybe it starts with electronic registration, maybe it starts with tabulation, but eventually it's going to move to online voting. So policymakers have to do research to move that ahead. On the other hand, they also need to maintain the integrity of elections, which is a foremost consideration.
Well, that's what I wonder, because did you pick up in attitudes of any of the people you interviewed or in any of the surveys, the notion that if we vote online, and if, God forbid, somebody hacks into this, A, will we even find out? And B, could we very well accidentally elect, because some hacker got into it, a party that we actually didn't elect?
Yes.
And that would be problematic, wouldn't it?
Yes, definitely. So it is a real concern. What's interesting is when you ask the public about remote voting methods. So we ask them, how risky do you perceive internet voting to be compared to voting by mail, which is another remote voting method, or voting by telephone? And surprisingly, respondents actually believe internet voting to be the least risky of the remote voting methods. So they actually perceive that more can go wrong with voting by mail and that more can go wrong with telephone voting. Now, compared to paper voting, obviously they think internet voting is more risky, but I really believe that there is a public perception out there that, risk, internet risk, technological risk in today's day and age is just part and parcel of modern life. And I feel that, there's a bit of a trade-off that some people, not all people, are willing to accept.
Right. Well, I guess we do so much of our shopping and banking online right now, and therefore it's not such a stretch to do voting as well.
We do, and there was just this this major hack, over the weekend that happened, and people talk about it, but it's just sort of accepted, right?
Is it?
To a certain extent, I would argue that it is.
Part of the cost of doing business nowadays, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not problematic. It definitely is, but I do think it's somewhat accepted.
How close are we to having a full-blown federal election or provincial election in this province where people can vote online?
I think it's a way off for a few reasons. So we saw that PEI used online voting for their plebiscite on electoral reform in the fall, and there was a report that came out of that, and they've recommended, not right now for elections. So yeah, I think when you look at online voting and potential risk, security compromising, hacking, the greater the stakes of the election, the more likely it is for somebody to try and compromise the election. So people typically think of municipal elections as being lower stakes elections, provincial higher, and federal even higher. So there is a greater risk there. And a lot of implementation concerns. So we wouldn't be able to use the system in Estonia, in Canada, for example, because they're a very small country. They have these
I was going to say, yeah, small country, smaller population, fairly compact countries, so.
Yes, and they have these ID cards. So this ID card is your bus pass. You can use it for European Union travel, your bank card. It's your everything, so you're not likely to want to share it. Implementing that type of infrastructure in Canada would be incredibly costly. So that's not necessarily an option for us. I do think that we are moving in that direction, but it'll be a while before we see it.
People cheat, right? I mean, we see that with nomination meetings for parties. We see that for elections. People try to stuff ballot boxes. They try to, not everybody, obviously, but some people do. Are you picking that up at all as a concern that people have, that the cheaters, this would give a whole new life to cheaters, right? It's a whole new canvas for them.
It would, yeah. I mean, one concern is double voting. So, for example, a husband and wife live together, and the husband takes the wife's voter card, knows her date of birth, knows her personal information, and is able to cast a vote online for her. And that is a serious problem. That is electoral fraud. And the way that some municipalities deal with that is they do a lot of outreach and education about the penalties. They increase the penalties if people are going to do that, and such as jail time, for example.
Electoral fraud, that's grounds for divorce. If
Yes,
you stole your
be.
spouse's voter card and cast a ballot, oh my goodness, that would not be a good thing. You think this is going to happen in your lifetime in Canada? I do.
I don't know widespread, but the fact when it comes to accessibility, Steve, is that we have special groups of electors that face additional barriers when voting. Persons from Indigenous communities, citizens living abroad or overseas, young people away at school, elderly citizens.
Well, not physically disabled and so on.
Yes, and persons with varied disabilities and abilities. And so I think that we have a duty to enhance the equality of the voting process. And some people with disabilities have been able to vote unassisted for the first time because of the applicators, sip and puff applicators that are available with online voting. So for those people, we're actually enhancing the equality of the franchise by introducing these online voting methods.
And that's all to the good.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Nicole Goodman, good of you to come into TVO and help us out with this. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.